welcome to our deep dive, you guys, into attachment styles.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is.
You know how you sometimes meet someone and you just click?
Right?
And other times it just seems impossible to make that connection happen?
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole science behind that.
There is.
And today we're using the book Attached as our guide to unpack decades of research on how our attachment styles shape our relationships.
It's so interesting how these patterns from our early years really impact our relationships.
It is. And the best part is we're not just diving into what goes wrong, but also what makes relationships thrive.
Exactly.
So let's start with something that often gets a bad rap. Dependency.
Okay.
The book opens with this story about Karen and Tim, a couple on a reality show.
Well, yeah.
They're competing in this grueling race around the world, and at one point, Karen's really struggling.
Uh-huh.
So she asks Tim to hold her hand.
Just a simple gesture.
Totally. But Tim hesitates.
Right.
He's worried about appearing needy.
It's a perfect example of how our society tends to view dependency as a weakness, especially in relationships.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how this actually contradicts what we know about human biology.
I remember that part in the book.
Yeah.
It talks about how for so long, even experts cautioned against too much closeness, especially between parents and children.
Right.
The thinking was that it would lead to insecure kids.
It's so different from how we see it now.
Totally.
Thankfully, attachment theory came along and changed those views completely.
Yeah.
We now know we're actually biologically wired for connection.
Right.
And that having a secure base is absolutely crucial for our well-being.
When you say secure base, what exactly does that mean in terms of attachment theory?
Well, it's this beautiful concept.
Okay.
Basically, it's that feeling of safety and support that allows us to explore the world with confidence.
Oh.
You know, like picture a child going off to play, knowing they can always come back to their parent for comfort.
Right.
That parent is their secure base.
So it's like having that solid foundation
Exactly.
that lets you grow and take risks because you know someone's there for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And in adult relationships,
Yes.
our partners often become those secure bases.
Right. The book actually mentions this fascinating study
Right.
where people were told they were about to get electric shocks.
Oh, wow.
Those holding a loved one's hand had significantly lower stress levels in their brain scans.
Wow. So it's not just a feeling.
No,
It's like a measurable thing.
it's physiological.
That makes me think about how much calmer I feel just being around my partner.
That's exactly it.
That's the secure base in action.
It is, and it relates to this interesting concept called the dependency paradox.
Okay, the dependency paradox.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I haven't. What is that?
The idea that secure dependence actually leads to greater independence.
So how does relying on someone make you more independent?
It all comes down to trust and self-efficacy. When you have that unwavering support from a loved one, you know that secure base, you develop a sense of trust in yourself and the world around you.
Right.
And that frees you up to explore, to take risks,
Right.
to be your most authentic self, knowing you have that safe haven to return to.
So it's not about clinging to someone.
No, not at all.
It's about having that foundation that empowers you to grow.
Precisely.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a fundamental part of attachment theory,
Yeah.
the strange situation experiment.
Yes.
I've heard about it before.
Okay.
Can you walk us through it?
Sure. So imagine a room with lots of toys
Okay.
and a baby happily playing.
Okay.
Then the mother leaves.
Uh-huh.
What the researchers saw is that different babies react very differently to this.
Right.
Some get super distressed, crying uncontrollably,
Yeah.
while others seem almost indifferent. But even those seemingly indifferent babies experience stress internally.
Oh, wow.
Their heart rates go up, but they've learned to suppress their emotions.
It's like they're putting on a brave face,
Exactly.
but inside they're anxious.
Yeah,
So what they show on the outside doesn't always match what's happening inside.
exactly.
What happens when the mom comes back?
That's when we see another set of reactions.
Oh, interesting.
Some babies calm down immediately,
Okay.
while others struggle to calm down or even push her away.
Wow.
These responses tell us a lot about the attachment style that's developing between them.
I can see now how that relates to adult relationships.
Yeah,
Like when Karen was struggling in the race and needed reassurance from Tim.
right.
It's like she was looking for that same secure base she had as a child.
You got it. Those early patterns, those blueprints from childhood, they really impact our behavior in adult relationships.
That's fascinating.
It is.
And this is where things get really interesting because attached introduces the three main attachment styles:
Yes.
secure, anxious, and avoidant.
That's right. Think of them like different operating systems for how we approach relationships.
Okay, like different programs.
Yeah, and understanding these categories can be really helpful, especially when you're dating.
So tell me more about these attachment styles.
Okay.
What makes each one unique, and how do they actually play out in real life?
Sure. Well, let's start with the secure attachment style.
Okay.
These are the folks who are generally comfortable with intimacy and being interdependent.
Okay.
They don't hesitate to express their needs, and they're also great at supporting their partners.
Feels pretty ideal.
It is, and research actually shows that people with a secure attachment style tend to have more stable and satisfying relationships.
That makes sense.
Now, on the other side, we have the avoidant attachment style.
Okay.
These individuals often prioritize independence and self-reliance.
Okay.
They might come across as emotionally distant or uncomfortable with too much closeness.
Like the guy in the book, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin, exactly.
He was always talking about his solo trips
Right.
and seemed to cringe at the thought of commitment.
That's a classic example.
Yeah.
People with an avoidant attachment style, they may struggle to express their feelings or rely on others. They might even push partners away without realizing it.
Just to maintain their sense of independence.
Exactly.
And then there's the anxious attachment style.
Yes.
I definitely relate to some of this, especially when I was younger.
Oh, yeah.
It's that constant worry about whether your partner really cares.
The book called it being hyper-attuned to your partner's mood,
Yeah.
which makes sense
Right.
because needing closeness is a basic human need.
Uh-huh.
But for those with an anxious attachment style, it can sometimes come across as clinginess or fear of being abandoned.
It's like they're always looking for signs that their partner's going to leave,
Exactly.
which can lead to a lot of insecurity and drama.
Definitely.
The book talked about Tamra,
Yeah.
who kept falling for emotionally unavailable guys.
Tamara's story is a great illustration of how attachment style can influence who we choose as partners.
Yeah.
We often end up with people who reinforce what we already believe about relationships.
So if you're anxious,
Yes.
you might be drawn to someone who is avoidant,
Exactly.
which just makes the anxiety worse.
Exactly. And that leads us to a very important point from the book, The Anxious Avoidant Trap.
Right.
When these two styles come together, it can create a very intense and frustrating dynamic.
A recipe for drama.
Pretty much, you've got the anxious partner constantly needing reassurance and closeness, while the avoidant partner pulls back feeling suffocated. It's this constant back and forth.
Push and the pull.
Yeah, pursuing and withdrawing.
Exhausting.
It can be for both people.
It's no wonder so many people related to that part of the book.
Yeah.
It's something that happens in so many relationships.
Right. But attached helps us see those patterns with more clarity and understanding.
And compassion.
Exactly. And by understanding those underlying needs,
Right.
we can start to shift those dynamics in a more positive direction.
Okay.
The book uses this great example with Janet and Mark,
Oh, yeah.
who are arguing about buying a washing machine.
Wait, what does a washing machine have to do with attachment?
Well, on the surface, it seems trivial, right?
Yeah.
But underneath, it's a classic clash of intimacy needs.
Okay, I'm curious. How does a washing machine symbolize that?
Well, Janet, who has an anxious attachment style,
Okay.
sees the shared washing machine as the symbol of commitment and togetherness.
Right.
It's a tangible representation of their life together.
Okay.
Whereas Mark, being avoidant,
Right.
feels like buying a washing machine is encroaching on his independence.
Okay.
He sees it as this symbol of domesticity that feels restrictive.
So it's not really about the appliance itself.
No,
It's about what it represents to each person.
exactly. And that's what's so important about understanding attachment styles.
Right.
It helps us understand those seemingly small arguments.
Decode the hidden meaning.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you're on a date.
Uh-huh.
How can you start to figure out someone's attachment style?
The book actually gives some really helpful tips. Someone with an anxious attachment style might be overly attentive, eager to please, or always seeking reassurance.
Okay.
They might ask a lot about your past relationships or seem really concerned about where they stand.
So being super attentive could be a red flag.
Not necessarily a red flag, but something to pay attention to.
Okay.
Now, someone with an avoidant attachment style might seem aloof,
Okay.
distant, or downplay the importance of relationships.
All right.
They might talk a lot about their independence or needing space.
So they're sending mixed signals.
Yeah, which can be confusing.
Yeah, especially for someone who's anxious.
Right. The book has a whole section on dating profiles.
I remember that.
And how to spot different attachment styles just from the language people use.
Yeah, like the guy who wrote about wanting a partner who was low maintenance and independent.
That's a pretty clear sign of an avoidant attachment style.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
While observing these behaviors can give you some clues, the best way to really understand someone's attachment style is through direct communication.
So just be upfront
Exactly.
about your needs and expectations.
Yeah, ask questions about what they want in a relationship,
Okay.
how they handle conflict,
Okay.
how much they value connection.
Yeah.
Someone who's secure will be open and honest in their responses.
Right.
And more importantly, they'll be receptive to your perspective.
That makes sense.
Excellent.
So effective communication is the real test.
It is.
It's about seeing how someone reacts when you're open about your needs.
Precisely. And here's the great thing.
Okay.
Even though our attachment styles are formed in childhood,
Uh-huh.
they're not set in stone.
So we can change.
We can, with self-awareness and effort, we can definitely move towards more secure ways of relating.
Yeah, it's so hopeful.
It means we're not stuck repeating those same patterns forever.
Well, the book mentions security priming.
Yeah, security priming.
Have you heard of that?
I'm not sure. It's basically the idea that by reflecting on the secure relationships in your life,
Okay.
you can actually shift your attachment style towards more security.
So you're training your brain.
Yeah, to recognize and seek out those healthy patterns.
Well, that's pretty cool.
So even if you haven't always had the most secure relationships in the past,
Yeah,
you can still cultivate more security in your present relationships.
I like that.
Think about the people in your life who embody secure attachment.
Okay.
Maybe it's a parent, a friend, a mentor.
Uh-huh.
Really focus on what makes those relationships feel safe and supportive.
Okay.
And the book even suggests that our relationships with our pets can be a source of secure inspiration.
Really, our pets?
I know it sounds unusual,
It does.
but think about it. We often give our pets unconditional love and acceptance.
That's true.
We don't keep score or judge them.
Yeah, and they never cancel plans.
Right, exactly. And that's the kind of energy we want to bring into our human relationships.
Yeah, just that unconditional love.
Yeah, by tapping into that, we can prime ourselves for more secure connections.
It's about finding those sources of security and letting them influence our other relationships.
Exactly. The book also suggests creating a relationship inventory.
What's that?
It's an exercise where you look at your past relationships through an attachment lens.
Okay.
You look for patterns and identify those triggers that activate your insecure behaviors.
So instead of replaying those same old relationship issues in our minds,
Yeah.
we can use that knowledge to break free from those cycles.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of building secure relationships. Effective communication.
It feels like effective communication is key to everything in relationships.
It really is.
It really does feel like communication is at the heart of it all.
It is. Even for people who are naturally secure, communication is so important.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Right.
Like a dance of expressing your needs, listening to your partner and finding that middle ground.
So how can we all get better at this whole effective communication thing?
Well, the book has some really great tips.
Yeah.
One of the most helpful is to start by identifying your triggers.
Those things that set off our insecurities.
Exactly, like those specific situations or behaviors that just activate those anxieties.
Right. Like for someone with an anxious attachment style,
Yeah,
a trigger might be their partner canceling plans last minute.
exactly. Or for someone avoidant, it might be feeling pressured to share their feelings.
Right. So different things for different people.
Yeah, and once you know your triggers, you can start communicating them more effectively.
Okay.
So instead of reacting in those same old ways.
They're getting angry or shutting down.
Exactly. You can try saying something like, hey, when you do X, it makes me feel Y.
So instead of saying you're always late,
Right.
you could say, when you're late, it makes me feel like you don't value my time.
That's a perfect example. You're shifting from blame to understanding.
Yeah.
You're expressing your needs without attacking your partner.
I like that the book also had that story about Lauren.
Oh, yeah, Lauren, Ethan.
Yeah, they had great dates, but then Ethan would always be distant afterwards.
Right.
And Lauren, being anxious, would overthink everything,
Of course.
trying to figure out what she did wrong.
Yeah.
But then her friend suggested she just ask Ethan directly.
Good advice.
And it turns out Ethan was gay
Wow.
and just too nervous to tell her.
It's a great example of how being direct can sometimes uncover things you didn't expect.
Yeah, you might not always get the answer you want,
True.
but at least you can move forward with a clear understanding.
Exactly.
Effective communication isn't about controlling the outcome.
No.
It's about creating space for honesty.
Exactly.
But the book also cautions against being too blunt.
Right, especially if the other person isn't ready to hear it.
Right. I remember the example with Tina and Serge.
Oh yeah, Tina and Serge on their movie date.
They were watching a movie, and Tina was getting frustrated because Serge wasn't making a move. So she just blurted out, "Can I have a kiss?"
Bold move.
And Serge was a little surprised at first, but he actually appreciated her honesty.
Yeah, it broke the tension.
It did, and they ended up having a great time.
That's awesome.
It just shows that what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to communication.
It's about being sensitive to your partner's personality and communication style.
Right. But the main principle is the same. Express your needs clearly and respectfully, and give your partner the space to do the same.
It's about building that bridge of understanding.
Exactly.
So to recap, this deep dive into attached has been amazing.
It has.
We've explored how our early experiences shape our attachment styles, those common relationship patterns, and the power of communication in creating those secure bonds.
The biggest takeaway for me is that understanding attachment styles isn't about labeling people.
Right.
It's about gaining self-awareness and developing the skills to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we all need connection and security.
Absolutely.
No matter what our attachment style is.
This deep dive has really just scratched the surface.
Right.
Attached has so much more valuable information and exercises. I highly recommend checking it out.
Yes, if you're ready to do your own deep dive into attachment styles, pick up a copy of Attached.
It might just change your perspective on relationships and love.
And maybe even yourself.
And here's a final thought.
Okay.
The book focuses on romantic relationships, but these attachment styles can also show up in other parts of our lives.
That's true.
Like our friendships, our families, even at work.
It makes you realize just how fundamental these patterns are to human connection.
They really are. And as we wrap up, I just want to say, no matter what your attachment style is, you're not alone.
Yeah.
We're all on this journey of learning, growing, and creating those meaningful connections that make life richer.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Attached.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something new about yourself and your relationships.
Yes.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep learning.